So welcome, David, and welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone.
So we have a wonderful hour ahead of dialogue, questions, and answers. And I would like to start with, how did the course come into your life? How did it start for you?
Well, I was on a scheduled trip that felt very important to me right at the end of my graduate studies at the University of Cincinnati. I had planned to go out to La Jolla, California for a humanistic psychology conference. Carl Rogers was going to be speaking there, Virginia Satir, and a lot of amazing inspiring teachers and speakers and writers. And it wasn't just a humanistic psychology conference, but also it was transpersonal psychology. So Francis Vaughan and Roger Walsh and a lot of transpersonal therapists were there. And of course, that's the branch of psychology that points to going beyond the personal, entirely beyond the ego, to the spirit, to the higher self. And so when I was there, I was attending a lot of workshops and lectures, presentations, and I would go down where the psychologists were selling their books and tapes back in those days, DVDs and so forth. And then I came upon two people who were students of Tara Singh, a Course in Miracles teacher, and they had Tara Singh's book, Nothing Real Can Be Threatened. And they also had Ken Wapnick's book, Forgiveness in Jesus. And they had the course on the table. So I was drawn there. I kept being drawn back to that table over and over and over and talking to the two students of Tara Singh and asking questions and sharing. And they had a videotape of Tara Singh speaking, and it was like the feeling in my heart was he was just speaking about things that I knew deep inside, but I hadn't heard people like speaking so directly and fully on the topics. So it was kind of a surreal experience. And I felt like, wow, this is amazing. So the more I opened up the course book that they had there and Nothing Real Can Be Threatened book, Tara Singh, and Forgiveness in Jesus book with Ken Wapnick, I did start to feel like this tsunami of love just washing over me, like my whole direction of my life would be changed forever, and it would be nothing like I'd ever planned. I could let go of future ambitions and goals and plans, and it almost felt like a life calling. I think like Mother Teresa had one time when she was riding on a train in India in the rural areas, and she felt this calling. I was like, wow, this is like a calling. And so it was very strong. And then I met a friend of mine who was also out in California, but he was up in Los Angeles. And I said, I'm going to join you up there. And maybe you could join me down here. And there's a group of people that have a Foundation for Life Action in Los Angeles. We could go visit where Tara Singh was based and these students. So he met me there, and he was into Yogananda, Kriya Yoga. We were both on self-realization path in our own ways, and we would play tennis and lose track of time and space and go into kind of transcendent states of mind, just rallying at a tennis court. This guy, Don, and so that was the beginning. And then I did go back to Cincinnati, where I was based, where the body of David was born, and and that really began a very earnest practice with the Course in Miracles. Initially, reading it and using it as an oracle in the early years, first 2.5 years, praying, getting and popping the book open and getting direct answers to my questions. So it was a very direct oracle. And then I would read on. I was so excited, much beyond the answer that I received. And And then eventually that transferred to being able to go into libraries or any places and seeing signs, like I'm sure a lot of us have had bumpers, billboards, songs on the radio. It just started flooding in with many, many symbols. And so it launched me on kind of a very accelerated journey with the Course. And then many years later, I would meet Frances Zhu and travel with her to many, many, many countries. And she would always just laugh and go, "You knew the Course before you picked up the book. This book was a reflection of your mind. Like it was a setup. You knew it before you even picked the book up." And in many ways, it did feel like that because I did have three revelatory experiences pretty rapidly of just losing track of time and space and disappearance of the universe in a very visceral kind of way and going into this revelatory light that Jesus calls the great rays. And then it was very, very rapid. All this happened before the publication of The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. So it was all kind of a rapid curriculum for me. But that's how it started, right out there at the Association for Humanistic Psychology conference in La Jolla, California, near San Diego.
Yeah. And it feels like you surrendered pretty much immediately to it. Like Francis said, it was your path and you knew it. But it feels like when I read your books and when I listen to you, it's like it's a complete surrender immediately. Was it like that?
Yeah, yeah. I remember reading in the Course, Jesus said, "This course is not a course in the play of ideas."
Right.
So I thought, wow, this is not really just theoretical or just philosophical. This is experiential. This is this is experiential. And then he said at one point, this course will be believed entirely or not at all. So I thought, I think I know what I'm getting myself into. This sounds like a very devoted spiritual path, extremely fast. And I thought, if I give my whole heart over to it, I'm going to have to trust a lot more than I was at the beginning when I picked up the book. I'm going to have to trust a lot, and I'm going to have to be open up to guidance. I need guidance. I need inner guidance, direction. I won't be able to accelerate in this journey and really fulfill my purpose of accepting the atonement, which is the sole function for the teacher of God and the miracle worker. I won't reach the goal unless I have a lot of trust and really a willingness to follow the guidance that I received. So I think it was very rapid for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a mystical path. It's mysticism. Could you speak a little bit to mysticism? And I'm translating Jesus' Gospel of Love now, and it feels like the whole teachings of Jesus, even in the Bible, is mystical, aren't they?
Yes,
Yeah,
it really is. It's sometimes say Christianity is political. That's not my experience. They say it's very theoretical and it's not based in foundational science. Actually, I find quantum physics and mystical Christianity to be very synonymous. I think all the divisions between science and religion fall away in the mysticism. And I think maybe the easiest definition of mysticism is just devotion to God. And and then when you get into the workbook in lessons 183, 184, he's really saying, put the name of God as a safe replacement for all the other little names that you made up. He's saying you can devote your heart to God and you can safely put your heart and your prayers and your desire on God. Not a God that you can define based on the past, but on the presence of God, on the presence of God's eternal love, and then let that direct the way. And I do find then that other things that seem to be attractive or even distracting before, they just fall away when you realize that that's really your relationship. It's not interpersonal. It's actually divine. You have a divine relationship with the Creator, and Jesus was a good example of that. I and the Father are one, and before Abraham was, I am. Those were not human words coming out of his mouth in the Bible. And I think for those that really, seek God sincerely, there's many pathways to find God, and there are many symbols. And for many, the Bible, I know a lot of Christians that are very devotional Christians that they find themselves tipping into mysticism just from their devotion to God, nothing more than their devotion to God. It's just everything else starts to fall away.
And if I understand it correctly, mysticism is implying that it's an experience, an experience of experiencing God or being one with God and living in that here.
Yeah, there's a question that's posed in the course, can God be reached directly? And the answer is yes. So I know there's been different teachers and writers with the course, and some have tried to make a case and say the course is not a mystical path, but wow, I had those revelatory experiences where all time and space disappeared, and I was just all there was the great rays of light, and those are very strong experiences that when I would seem to come back, it would be a little intense coming back to the earth realm of time and space, like a fish kind of getting taken out of the water and then, okay, re-enter and back and being on the sand for a while on the beach. It was a bit intense, but actually, I think we do see that experience is really the goal. Direct experience of God is the goal, and mystical experiences will come along the way. They're not an end point, but they're like little glimpses of the end. They're temporary glimpses of the end. That's what revelation is. It's a temporary glimpse of the end, or of what is. Byron Katie calls it love what is. It's a glimpse of what is. Yeah.
Yeah. And aren't the miracles also like glimpses?
Yeah, I think they're like little snapshots of just simply seeing the false as false. It's like in the miracle, there's joy, there's love, there's happiness, there's all this expansive heart. And there is this sense of that what I'm looking upon is not real. And it's very freeing because it's just the addiction to the images and the belief in the reality of the images that generates all the resistance to what is, to the present moment. So yeah, I think miracles are very practical in the sense that Jesus says this day and every day should be devoted to miracles, and I think that's why he gave us a course in miracles. If it was just a course in revelation, it would be maybe a paragraph long, uh, and like Jesus says in the workbook, we say God is, and then we cease to speak. It wouldn't be many words. But Jesus is saying with the Course in Miracles, this is more practical for you right now. You need to be miracle minded. You need to be habitually, consistently miracle minded before you're ready for revelation and for truth, because it will be too scary for you with your fragmented perception. It would just be like you'd be hurled. He said, don't be concerned. You won't be hurled into reality. But without A Course in Miracles, or without the steps, the practices, the opening our hearts, and all those miracles, flashes and flashes of miracles, I think love would be too fearful to approach. And the miracles just have us build up our readiness through our willingness to approach the light and approach it without fear, embraced by the Holy Spirit, approaching the light. Yeah.
So you have lived A Course of Miracles for many, many years. What does your life look like now? Do you study the book? Do you live in a constant miracle? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, I don't really study the book. It's funny, it started with me with the Course as like an oracle, and even now I don't really use it as an oracle, but little times I'll get little prompts and nudges to open up to a particular passage or place, or it will get used in a conversation, or it gets used in the daily miracles a lot still, but not so much as a study or practice, kind of in a linear timeline way. I enjoy doing the lessons live. Um, I feel it's just one of us, and it's just great joy for me to read the lesson and to share whatever comes, some music or some thoughts or words of comfort and blessing or cheer or joy. But that just seems very natural. Like that's just part of the flow of what seems to be daily life. But yeah, it's I think in one sense, I know you visited the community down in Mexico. I think I was told early on from Jesus that there would come a point where everything would get more digital. And here we are in a Zoom room having this thing, this was long ago. He would use words like digital. I'm like, digital? What does that even mean? But that was before a lot of the technologies were even in place. So, I didn't really know the full extent of digital, but I also saw that the course wasn't really like a mainstream document. I felt like it would proliferate and it would become go all over the world with many, many translations and probably many more to come. But as far as the practice of it, the living of it, it seemed like the way would be kind of like with Jesus and the apostles and Mary Magdalene and the women core. It would just be a core group that were ready to dedicate their life to this direct experience with God, to the mysticism. And it seems that it goes that way. It's, even with Helen Schuckman at the beginning, um, you know, they originally asked her, how many people is the Course in Miracles for? And she said four, I think. And they said, oh, come on. You know, what are you talking about? And she said, maybe seven or eight, but she, but it's for the mind. It's for the sleeping mind. And really, how many teachers of God does it take to heal the world, save the world? Jesus says just one, but that one is not a body or in a body. So his qualification is amazing. Well, just one, but that is not that one is not a body or in a body. That's pointing to the mind again, to the sleeping mind, accepting the atonement and recognizing its oneness with God and with everything and everyone. So I feel like that's the key, is that I've just kind of followed the guidance, and then when people would show up and say things, even for Helen and Bill and Judy and Ken, Helen was such an amazing scribe, and Bill was so steady. But I remember talking, I had a lot of lunches and with Judy, and she would, like a fountain of wisdom, she would just sit there at the lunch, just channeling all kinds of parables and stories of the four, including the beginning when they first came together as the four, and that time when they had all these big black binders, but they didn't really know what to do with them. And then when they prayed, and basically, people weren't hearing anything, but then it was Judy would be the one that would hear the message, and then Judy heard, make the commitment first. That's a pretty strong parable, because the commitment that they were asked to make, the four of them, was a lifelong commitment to the Course. And Ken was very studious, and PhD, and Helen, she was a research psychologist. Bill, research psychologist, the head of the the in Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, head of have a department, and Judy, had done some articles. She was kind of into transpersonal psychology and married and children, and that's a lot for a human being to be told, make the commitment first and dedicate your entire life to this book and the practice of it. That's no small thing. And I know in history of spirituality, you look at there's a lot of Buddhist monasteries and Christian monasteries and things. But I think even for a human being to take a vow of a lifelong commitment to the spiritual path, even like in a monastery or a convent, that was no small thing. In this day and age, a lot of the young people will go, "What? You mean there was actually people in history that would dedicate their entire life to one thing and devote to the practice of that?" That for a lot of young people, that's extraordinary. But this is an age of an explosion of images and technologies and options and choices. And for a lot of people, they would never, young people would even imagine. And so to give yourself over to a life calling is really, when you look at it, when you give yourself fully to that calling for God, it includes a renunciation or a falling away of everything else that was there before. Like Buddha talked about, empty your mind of everything you think, and think you know. Jesus in chapter or lesson 189, simply do this, be still, lay aside all thoughts of what you are, what God is. There it is again. At one point, Jesus says, the truth is true and only the truth is true. And you must accept two parts of the statement in order to accept the truth. You must accept that the truth is true and that only the truth is true. He's talking about a direct experience of the light. He's not talking about theologies or pathways or approaches. He's saying the actual experience of God is true, is real. That's reality. And then nothing real can be threatened. God can't be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. So it's pointing to letting go of the world. And a lot of spiritualities have talked about renouncing the world, but Jesus is saying in the workbook, many have tried to renounce the world while still believing in it. So, that's a tricky path too. That gets into asceticism and all kinds of detours. The ego's quite clever. And it will have plenty of options if you think you're going to go for God, to dangle a little carrot over here and say, hey, what about this over here? And so you have to be very sincere in that devotion and dedication to God. And if you do go with that dedication, then you find everything else starts to fade in consciousness, fade away very naturally. It's not like you wrestle with it, it just falls away. Darkness cannot stand in the light. So I think, in terms of I see it all as the same. So I've done travels all over the world in 44 countries and thousands, probably tens of thousands of gatherings over 3.5 decades. And yet that's just the parable of David and the form of how things seem to be playing out. But the experience is just one of purpose, staying in alignment and in purpose with God, and pulling the mind away from the past, which is the whole script. Lesson number 7, I see only the past. It's basically putting all your attention on God and your purpose and going zero attention to the world of form. And yet it all works out. The travels worked out, the divine providence came in, people donated either money or frequent flyer miles or come stay at my house. I remember going to Sweden a lot there early on, and Ulla Wallén had hosted me at a big barn, and wake up in the morning and all these cows mooing. That's what my alarm clock. I didn't need a watch or a clock. I had cows mooing to wake me up, and doing long, beautiful day-long sessions and retreats anywhere from a couple, 2 or 3 days up to 6 weeks. I did quite a few 6-week retreats, particularly in Mallorca, Spain. But actually, I feel it's all involuntary. It's not like there's any formula to reach God. It's just like you pray and then you listen to your guidance and inspiration, and then you follow it like you've done, Anna,
Yeah.
with everything that's unfolded. It's very simple, actually. You just pray in your heart, you feel the joy, you feel the inspiration, and then you follow it. And everything unfolds really effortlessly because there's no person doing it. It's the spirit behind it all.
And it can be quite challenging sometimes. I felt like I'm stretched by spirit. Spirit is like stretching me, and the guidance sometimes is so um, different from what I believe. So for me, it has been uh, definitely a lot of joy, but also challenging.
Yeah.
Could you speak
Yeah,
a
I
little
think
bit to that? Yeah.
yeah, it's always challenging to the ego, and so to the extent that we believe in the ego, there's going to be resistance. As Jesus says, whenever you feel the need to become defensive about anything, you have identified yourself with illusion. And that defensiveness can take the form of fear, anxiety, tightness, resistances of all different kinds, seemingly psychosomatic ones, all kinds of body symptoms, um, discomforts, feelings of inconvenience, all kinds of different ways it comes in. But basically, that's just the ego wanting to cling to itself and its world. And when you follow the course, it's kind of like, we want to be practical, but our five senses are showing us the projection of the ego's projected world. So our five senses are in cahoots. They're in cahoots with the ego. So you start to go deeper, and even with the resistances, you start to realize, like, wow, are you telling me I'm going to have to be 100% intuitive and 0% empirical? Jesus is like, exactly. I'm going to be 100% guided and rely 0% on the past, my past learning and my five senses. It's like, exactly, very good. And the ego is like, bah humbug. The ego is like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. And to the ego, it is ridiculous. But in the end, it does become more clear that that's what the journey is about. It's about going inside and following that guidance to a T, to let go of everything. A lot of times people will say, you know, the course isn't really telling me to let go of my family. The course isn't really telling me to let go of my job. The course isn't really telling me to let go of my children. And this is where the mysticism comes in, because actually all of the thoughts of the past and the future are private thoughts. All of the thoughts that we call a personality self are all private thoughts. What's underneath that belief in these private thoughts? The belief in a private mind. A private mind that's separate from God, a mind that has divorced itself from its creator. And in the end, you start to realize that when the mind really goes and practices the course, the ego will try to justify certain situations, certain things in form. It's going to try to justify itself by justifying the world that it projected. But if you look at the workbook lessons of the course, Jesus starts off the very first workbook lesson, nothing I see means anything. And number two, I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. All the ego meaning it has for me was given to it by the ego. So this is where, the rubber meets the road, but that's also where you will find seemingly not just 100 or 1,000, but tens of thousands of course students that say, well, he's not really saying that we have to give up the world. Hmm. Lesson 128, the world I see holds nothing that I want. Well, yeah, it's it's beyond this world is the world I want. Oh, okay. But it's the ego will try to justify the world in some way, shape, or form. Even though Jesus says in the Course, the world was made as an attack upon God, a place where God can enter not. Whoa, that's not mincing words. That's a mysticism line if I've ever heard one. Can you go for that and still be joyful? I say yes. I say big yes. Can you be happy? Extraordinarily happy, consistently peaceful, very, very deeply peaceful by letting go of all attempt of believing in attack. Because if the ego made the world as an attack, and I'm to judge not, I'm to have that attack transmuted into a miracle, into pure light, it must be that the light's real and the attack was never real. It can't be that God created attack. Why would a God of eternal love create attack? So you start to see this is about letting go of the world. And even the mystics and saints, you were talking about the tightness and some of the feelings you have. But if you read Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross, if you read the memoirs of Mother Teresa or Saint Francis's autobiography, or even Yogananda, autobiography of a yogi, you'll find that they faced all those resistances as well. It's just they got plenty to write about that too. And so it should be seen as just the ego kicking and screaming a bit before it's shown to be nothing, a puff of nothingness.
Yeah, and it has felt like jumping off a cliff and not knowing where I will land. And what I do see when I do that is the healing. It's like the healing is presented to me. And sometimes it takes weeks until I see it unfold. But every time I see the healing, and then I trust more
Yeah.
and I'm more willing. So I will do it again and again and again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way of describing it. I started to get these intuitive guidances and they seemed a bit like big leaps. And, the ego was saying that's risky, 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 risky. But as I followed, oh my, the healing, the open hearts, the joy, the laughter, the friendliness, the kindness, everything came pouring through from listening and following. And so in that sense, I think we are attracted to the light through the miracles. And then when we get closer, then we're much more ready for that direct experience that the Course is pointing to.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that I get bits and pieces, and it's enough. I get very full from it, very, very full.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. I have some of the my early trips to Europe, I spent quite a lot of time in Sweden and with Helena Hunnesson and Jenny Fagerstedt was her name at that time. Um, and and did things in Stockholm and Vallentuna, a little to the north, and then all the way down south, and then going up to little summer homes up north, and and so it was beautiful because a lot of the ones that I was interacting with Jenny and Helena, they were two that came kind of as part of an early group, small group called Messengers of Peace to just give over their lives in a very dedicated way, and and then face a lot of unconscious darkness that comes up when you make that commitment because it's like the ego will go from suspicious to vicious if you start to think of the Course as like a life's calling, that you're going to go for believe this Course entirely or not at all. I just thought Well, not at all is not an option for me. And entirely doesn't scare me because if those are the options given, then not at all is not my option there. So I'm going all in. And yet we don't fully understand maybe the fullness of how deep the unconscious darkness is.
Mm.
That mostly will be letting it up and letting it go and letting it up and letting it go until it just empties out. And we can't stop, we can't ever throw in the towel once we've made our commitment.
So true. So before we open up for more questions from participants, you suggested the topic of setting the goal. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, that was like when I came to that section in the course, that was like a eureka experience because I could see Jesus was saying that in order to follow the Holy Spirit, you have to set the goal of truth out front. And if you really are firm with that, if you really hold the goal out front, it's like a torch going into a cave with a bright torch in front, then you'll be able to advance. But he says only the ego looks back, and when the ego looks back, it just decides whether it likes it or it doesn't. But he was kind of foreshadowing for me in that section that you can't really keep looking with the five senses and looking at the past and expect to open up. Because the past is gone. The past was corrected. The unholy instant was corrected by the holy instant and the Holy Spirit in one instant simultaneously. So if you're looking to the past, you're just denying the correction. And the whole point of the course is to accept the correction, the atonement. But you can't even move toward the atonement as long as you keep basing decisions based on past learning and past beliefs. Present trust has to direct the way. So for me, when I read that section, I was like, I just stayed with it. I said, "Oh, Eureka! Oh my God, this is everything to me." And even a friend of mine who I knew for many years, Dorothy, she would always say, "So what? Now what?" That was her simple way of saying, "So what? The past is gone. Don't try to use it anymore. Now what? Now comes the present trust, the guidance, the miracles." And I really do think that that's like a gateway. That one section, just I read it and reread it, and he said, if you really put the goal of truth in front, then you will perceive that everyone and everything is playing their part perfectly
Yeah.
in that unified perception. And I said, oh yes, that's what I want. Like the promise in there where he says, not one seeming difficulty, but will melt away before you reach it. You need take thought for nothing except the only purpose that you would fulfill. That purpose can stabilize perception in a unified way,
Yeah.
the real world and the happy dream. But without that purpose, then it's just fragmented and very, very difficult. It just seems like it's tumultuous without that purpose out in front.
Yeah, the goal of trust in the moment. Right. I was
Yes.
nervous before we were going to meet today, and I did forgiveness work on making you an idol because I do. And what happened was that it felt very safe and stable and trust to spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Isn't
that's
it
it.
so simple? Just the trust. The present trust really does direct the way.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Wonderful. Let's open up. So you can use your digital hand, raise your digital hand, or wave your hand if you have a question or something you would like to speak to David about. Let's see. Marie, I will put you in spotlight. Here you go.
Hello, David.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. So I have a question. So we speak a lot here about being done through the Holy Spirit to go through. And that can be very scary, of course, for the ego. So I would like to hear your experience when it started and how it has been on your journey. So for me, it can be very strong, very harsh, and when it comes through someone else, can be whoa. um, and I believe it can become softer, and I don't know. And also, what I'm hearing is people pleaser is going away on the path. But I would love to hear your experience.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. That's a beautiful question. I know at the beginning, it wasn't so much something that was in my mind because I was just using the course as an oracle, getting amazing answers by praying and opening the book. But then when I started going to Course in Miracles groups, for the first 2.5 years, I think, it was just me and the Spirit, me and Jesus, me and the Holy Spirit and the book and Oracle. It was very intimate that way, very cozy and intimate. But then when I started to go to Course in Miracle groups, there was one week in particular where prior to that week, I was going to 0 course groups. And then by the end of that first week, I was going to 5 course groups. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a seemingly new experience. And then in those groups, I would just listen and occasionally feel guided to maybe say a little something here or there. But one of those groups had no facilitator, and it was a large group, a long running group on a Monday night. I think it was Monday night or Tuesday night. And then I would go. It was pretty close to my home where I lived, and I would go there and I would just pray and be there and go in, welcome. We'd have some food and hugs and all that. And then progressively, as I was there every week, they would go around, read a paragraph from the book, study group, and then when they would pause and have a question, um, they would say, oh, I don't know what this means, or I don't understand this, or something like that. And then I would just feel this presence come through me and offer an answer, just trying to be helpful, trying to be truly helpful. And then it would happen again and again, so that after the weeks and months went by, the big group, they'd go around, read the book, read a paragraph, and then when they would pause, they would have a question or something, and all like 26 heads would all turn to the David character. Like there was a Delphic oracle in the house or something. But it probably would look like a comedy if Monty Python could have some fun with that. But and then I would just let the Spirit speak through me, being done through. Well, I like you, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but I just was going there praying my prayer to be truly helpful and let him who sent me, show me how to heal. Just doing that early prayer, I was just showing up doing that every week, and that's what was happening. And then when I started traveling, first I took a trip up to Monroe, Michigan in 1989 with some friends to see Tara Singh. And before the the lecture started, he got there maybe an hour before the people got there. And I was prompted to go there and get there before he got there. So he was just meditating in the chair on a stage, and I was just in the audience meditating. I had all kinds of deep experiences there. 1990, I started going to Roscoe with Foundation for A Course in Miracles with Ken and Gloria, meeting translators from all over the world. And then 1991 started traveling. It was like a 5.5 week trip, and then followed by a rest period, and then 6 week trip. But as I began to travel, I had more one-on-one holy encounters with people I would meet along the way, or two-on-one, and I would just be there wanting to be in the miracle, offer a blessing, have a holy encounter. I was like saying to Jesus, show me these holy encounters. I would love that. And sure enough, I found myself, they seemed a little more involuntary, like just more natural, because I was very shy. I was voted most shy in my senior class. So I wasn't like an extroverted social person, like a butterfly going around to flowers, or a bee going to different flowers. I was much more shy and introverted. So it was a slow process of opening up and just letting the presence of love. But my heart wanted to connect. My heart wanted to be used. My heart wanted to feel connection and joy. And then, even when I traveled some of these trips, I would be like in a very simple, in a rest area or something, or hostel where there was a bunch of beds. And then sometimes I started hearing the guidance, see that person over in the kitchen? And I'd say internally, mm-hmm. And they said, tomorrow morning, you're going to have a big holy encounter with her. I was like, okay. And then the next morning, I'd be in the kitchen. She'd come in, and it'd be this 45-minute or an hour deep discussion, deep holy encounter that would come. So the guidance was leading me, showing me the way very gently, little by little, because I had been so shy. I had to be eased into being done through. And then over the years, I just became more relaxed and actually very joyful and passionate about holy encounters, not knowing when they would happen or where they would happen, but just being on the ready and willing. And then when they would come, I would not be surprised by them. And it just slowly, gently became a little more natural for me. And then, yeah, when the travels around the United States and Canada kept going, increasing, there was many, many, many holy encounters, many groups, many things, conferences. And then around 2003, world travel started. So I was going to many, many countries, and translators showing up, and everything orchestrated by Jesus, frequent flyer miles coming in. And it was just getting full on into being done through. And that, I think, is a very important phase with the Course, because it takes you more towards a quiet mind, where then eventually you will go more rapidly into a direct identification with spirit and a disidentification with the body. So you go through feeling like you're a human doer instead of a human being, stressful human doer, to being done through and really going, oh, I like this. This feels relaxing, joyful. And then you move more to mysticism, which is I call it undoing the doer. Francis and I did some amazing workshops and retreats on undoing the doer, where you actually start to take no thought for the body or the world, and you start to drop into a deeper and deeper stillness that is very, very and natural, and it just calls you more and more into that stillness and silence. But it doesn't matter. The body, you can have a still mind and the body can still seem active. It's just that you don't quite feel that there's something doing it through you. You feel more of a merge. So there's not the higher power doing it through the body or the personality self. It all starts to just merge together, integrate into a unified awareness in the end. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. And what I'm hearing underneath is the communication. I hear you had the communication very early, speaking with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit all the time, and then there is this slowly process going on, and trust.
Yes.
That's my key word since I started with this course. Trust.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, Marie. That's it. And our
Yeah.
trust grows and grows. That's why he has a whole section there in the manual for teachers called development of trust. And so it seems to be necessary to come in stages, and that's what you're experiencing, and that's what I went through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Marie. And next one is Magdalena.
Tack. Hi, David.
Hi.
I have a question. You were talking about this peaceful and quiet mind, and I wonder how do you think that our feelings, what place does our feelings have towards the course? Because pretty often I feel that I'm up in my feelings and that my ego is running them. But on the other hand, when I'm in bliss, when I'm going with the Holy Spirit, I'm also filled with feelings. So what place does our feelings have in the course? And when do I know what kind of feelings to follow?
Yeah, that's a good question, Magdalena. Jesus tells us in the Course that he says, you have but two emotions, love and fear. So we know there's a lot of derivatives of those two basic emotions. And it can get kind of a messy with all those derivatives because there's so many. But I did ask Jesus about that myself. I said, what place do feelings and emotions have in the overall context of spiritual awakening? And when I was much younger, I always liked maps. Like when I was in 7th and 8th grade, geography, and I would love to make maps. And so Jesus gave me a map of the mind with concentric circles. And now that map has been put into an instrument for peace, and then Spiri, and now the forgiveness AI. It keeps evolving, but it's the basic levels there that the outer ring of the mind of consciousness is the perceptual ring. So that's what we're perceiving with our five senses. And underneath that ring is the emotional ring. So Jesus would guide me to places in the Course where he would say, you will look upon that which you feel within. So the feelings are underneath the perception of what I perceive with my five senses. He said, yeah, they're right underneath there. In fact, when people get too much into intellectualism, they get divorced from their feelings, and that's very inhibitive for spiritual awakening. If you're not in touch with your feelings, not a good thing. So in one sense, great, you're in touch with them, but you feel like a lot of them are egoic, and then the blissful ones feel very inspired. But he talks about the emotional level as the ring of fear that's under the gross perceptual world. And then the good thing is that that's just two rings, and then there's more. And so under the emotional realm is the realm of cognition or thought. So our emotions come from thoughts, and Jesus says you have but two emotions. So the fear comes from ego thoughts, and the bliss, you called it comes from Holy Spirit aligned thoughts. So the realm of cognition is there, and then if you go underneath the cognition thoughts, you go down to the realm of beliefs. So you can believe things about your thoughts. And sometimes Byron Katie will say, don't believe all your thoughts. And basically, but the beliefs are what generates the thought. So we have to get in touch with forgiveness at the belief realm. It's the one belief that takes us away from all the other beliefs. And that's what the Holy Spirit is teaching us, to go all the way down, perceptions, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and then to go right to forgiveness, which is the one helpful belief out of all the rest. And then what's underneath that is the realm of prayer or desire. So that's why even in the talk about the holy instant, Jesus says, you can't prepare for the holy instant without placing it in the future, and it's not in the future. So that's like, for the analytical mind, that's like a short circuit. Like, you're saying I should go into the holy instant, but I can't prepare for it. For the human being, that's a conundrum, that's a predicament. And Jesus is saying, pray. You will experience the Holy Spirit through the prayer. Desire it with all your heart, and you will experience it. So those are the five rings and the five levels of mind, I call it, that I put in my books. And Jesus gave that to me early on because I studied psychology, so I had a bunch of questions about the mind, the psyche, emotions, perceptions, cognition. I was all full of questions, and he said, "Here, let's make it simple." He put it out on a map, and I'm glad he gave me that map because that has served me well.
Thanks for the answer. Thank you very much. That gave me something to work with.
Beautiful. Thank you, Magdalena.
Thank you, Magdalena. So, David, we have 3 hands up and we are on the top of the hour. Do you feel like going on and answer them, or would you like
Yeah,
to?
we could answer the last 3 here, so you can keep on with your schedule. You've got a lot going on today.
Oh, thank you, David. So, Pia, go ahead.
Hello, David.
Hi, Pia.
Hi. And I have more or less a private question for you, but it's a little bit fun. I was listening to Dove one evening, and he was talking about God is. So I wrote down God is. And in the morning, I was reading what I have been written, and then it said goodies. And I get, oh my God. So I made a painting that God is, good is. And then, you maybe remember Staffan. He had been on a lot of your courses. And he said that you have talked about this goodies. You said something about Sweden is not a religion, people, and
the candy.
But you can, yeah.
Goodies candy.
Yeah.
I would not have got that, but traveling with Jenny and Helena, driving around Sweden, doing gatherings in people's homes and barns and things, we passed by the road and then the big sign, goodies. And I said, they said, that's a candy over here. I said, well, no, that's the most important part of the course. God is. So that was the Holy Spirit humor. That's probably what you heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a private question for you, because I've been doing Regina Down Acres Gentle Healing on the Awakening Together. And that was 3.5 years. And we are going to make a book about with my pictures.
Yes.
So
yes.
would you like to write a little bit about these goodies, your experience in Sweden? Sweden.
You wrote me, I think,
yeah,
asked me about that, and I did send a text, but it's interesting because that would be hard to put into, when he says in the workbook, we say God is, and we cease to speak. He's like saying these could be your last 2 words ever. So I think your painting looks gorgeous, but it's almost like I don't think I could even add any words to the amazement and the wonder of the big heart and the God. I think it's good for me to put a commentary on something like that. That's probably the one thing I could never comment on because it's so perfect. Those are the last 2 English words we would ever need to speak. And so, yeah, but I appreciate you offering me that, but I think the painting is just perfect the way it is.
Okay, David. Thank you a lot. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. Antea?
Hi, David.
Hi.
My question is, what do you see when you look throughout your eyes? Because I'm thinking I see a world that doesn't exist, but I'm so curious, what does it look like when you look? Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I remember all those years when I was studying the course, I was wondering, like, where is this going? What what is it going to look like? That's what Anna said earlier. What does it look like in your life? But actually, there was a line that really helped me. It said, the body's eyes will continue to report differences, but the healed mind will put them all into one category. They are unreal. So it's pretty much what you're saying is that you still perceive a world where there seems to be differences, sizes, shapes, colors, just the fabric of the matrix. The fabric's there, but it is more like you're looking at a tapestry, just like if you did a big quilt with many, many pieces, and you could behold the whole quilt and just enjoy the quilt from a place of acceptance and non-judgment. That's the key. That's the key to perceiving the tapestry, with grace, with a sense of calm and tranquility and serenity, is not really trying to break anything apart or read meaning into anything, and not really all the labels and definitions that have been projected onto the many pieces of the tapestry. I just don't buy into those anymore. When all the conflicts seeming of the world, where they say, whose side are you on? I like when the course first had copyright controversy, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copyright lawsuits going on with the Course in Miracles. And then people would stop me on my gatherings and they'd say, which side is right? And I'd say, what do you mean? Which side? They say, which side are you taking? I'd say, I don't see sides. And they would say, but which one is best? And I'd say, which book are you reading? You know, I just couldn't compute that. So for me, it was very important to realize that a healed mind can't take a side in anything because they aren't real issues. And even when I would travel, wars would break out, and whose side are you on? Or they would start making different editions of the course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one is best? And da da da. What are you talking about? It's seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world. You don't have to believe into the definitions and the constructs of the world. At one point, yeah, it was like somebody would come to me and we'd be sitting in a laundromat or a muffler shop or something, and they'd start talking about God and everything. And or I go onto a podcast and they'd first question, they'd say, define God. And I would just laugh. I would just say, what? What are you talking about? God doesn't have a definition. God is just pure love. There is no definition. There's nothing defining God. To me, that's the most obvious thing, is God is without definition. Love is without definition. But the ego mind tries to give meaning to the bits and pieces of the matrix. And for me, it's just, I'm very playful with it. I sing a lot. People talk to me. There's lots of joy and laughter because there's a lightness, like let's enjoy the comedy of this. The world will end in laughter. I even posted a painting a friend of mine did, and somebody made a comment, and you don't know this, and I was like, what does that even mean? I'm enjoying the gentle laughter of the Holy Spirit at not judging the form, and just feeling the acceptance of the love that's inside. So that's kind of the way it is for me. That's the way the world is.
Thank you. I needed to hear that.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you, Pantea. We have the last one. It's Johanna.
Hi, David.
Hi.
First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you for so what? Now what? That's going to stick with me so much. And I'm thinking now we're sitting 20 plus people. I assume you're in the US, we're all in Sweden, and technology is such an enabler for meeting like this. And the pandemic did quite a lot, and technological advances has done quite some good. And you've been with a course for quite some years. Would you see that the world is this world as we're in now, that the world is more awake now with the help of technology?
Yeah, what I see everything in terms of world, including technology, is just ultimately symbols that the Holy Spirit can use. So I'm perceiving the Holy Spirit using these symbols in the most miraculous ways. Even with Zoom, for example, we're using now, but even with AI, some people are quite afraid of AI, but I have so many friends. I have a whole team of people. We have a whole AI team. Anna probably knows of all the teams we have, and the AI team. It's most glorious to watch the Spirit inspire and use the symbols. So I do feel, yeah, that even though the ego will put sometimes a fear of technology, or, I think during the development of nuclear wars, nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that even Einstein was knowing that he did things with out of such love, but when he was confronted by a Japanese journalist at the end, like, what about your part in this whole Hiroshima and Nagasaki thing? It may have brought up a little guilt, but that's still from a personal perspective, as if people are doing things or technology is doing things. I think when you go much deeper, you start to realize that there are no causes or effects in form. And you start to realize that the mind is where the causation is. And the ego belief is an unreal cause because it's a belief in mind. So its effects, the projected world, is unreal as well. And since the world is an unreal effect of an unreal cause, the ego, then there are no cause and effect relationships in the world. Jesus calls them spurious cause-effect relationships. Wow, that's a big dismantling, because in our education, all of our systems of thought, no matter what field of study, science, physics, for every action, there's a reaction, you know, home economics, if you have to bake a cherry pie, there's things about temperature of the oven and what's the ingredients and how long you leave it in the oven. The whole world is based on false cause-effect relationships, believing that things in the past cause things in the present, which cause things in the future. And then you get to the Course, and Jesus says, no, time goes backwards. Backwards? Now, wait a minute. That's really questioning the linear progression. Jesus is saying time goes backwards to an ancient instant that's beyond the hope of remembering. He's saying that you'll never remember the Big Bang, but you can accept the correction at any instant that you want. You can't figure out the past. So the more we go deeper into these teachings, that's a big one, that there aren't cause-effect relationships in time, in linear time. And then you start to feel more that you can just live out of your inspirations, live what's in your heart, not out of fear of not having enough, fear of lack of money, lack of body freedom, lack of something, it's all based on this linear life. Even genetics, people tell me, well, my mother had this and heart disease or cancer or these different things. There's the genetic fallacy. There's the the fallacy of Newtonian physics, the believing that there's causes and effects in time and space. You can go in any field and start to really see that if you follow Jesus, he will dismantle the linear perception entirely and bring it all back to the simultaneous nature of the present moment. I was recently watching this thing on Mind Valley, and there was like an 84-year-old man who basically, reincarnation said we had all these lifetimes lined up on the timeline, but it's all happening quantum. It's all happening simultaneously. So this man said he reached old age and he started doing what's called quantum jumping. He started to jump into different scenarios, like different channels of the TV station, and he would jump in to a lifetime scenario where he was a famous photographer, come back and do these spectacular photography. He'd quantum jump into another one where he's a fantastic painter, come back, do spectacular paintings. One he jumped into where he was like an acclaimed pianist, and he comes back. He's never played the piano once. And he looks at the piano and he goes, "Oh, I don't like the black keys, but I like the white ones." And he sits and he starts just tuning into a vibration from his quantum jump. And then he starts playing these amazing pieces. I saw one video where he was playing this really lovely song, and they said, "How long have you been playing?" And he said, 4.5 months. And they were like, "You gotta be kidding." And he said, they said, "How could you learn to play the piano that well in 4.5 months?" And he said, "Oh, didn't learn it. I just kind of feel this resonance, this frequency from this particular quantum jump, and then it just comes through me." So that's why we have child prodigies, who they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they tap in. They have amazing skills and abilities that they didn't have enough years to learn them from a linear perspective. So we're starting to see this quantum physics. It very much lines up with what Jesus is teaching, and he's like Rumi, the famous poet, said, there is a field beyond the ideas of right and wrong. There is a field. I'll meet you there. There it was. Middle Eastern poets, scientists, quantum physicists, and Jesus they're all on the same page. They're all teaching us the same thing, that our mind is one, it's unified. So it's quite amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Johanna. All right. So I will make us all in the same room so we can say thank you, David.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So much.
And Bennett Joy, this is another trip to Sweden, now a Zoom trip. That was the fastest, easiest one I've ever done. Zooming to the light.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Om jag kan få dem att åka. Jo, nu fick jag till det. Hej, hej.